Okay, the reading for this week is a selection from Emperor Wuzong's Edict on the Suppression of Buddhism, the Edict of the 8th month. Right, we won't be reading the whole edict. We'll be reading the important excerpt from it that's included in William Theodore de Barry's Sources of Chinese Tradition, Volume 1. And again, the worksheets we are using were put together by somebody at Columbia University, and I will provide the link to those below in the description, and I may make a study guide and delve more deeply into these texts at some point. But for now, I'm just going to read the questions that are on the Columbia University worksheet and read the provided excerpts. Okay. So introduction, here it says, Buddhism, of course, was a fundamental part of the culture, religiosity, and even the skyline of Tang, China. Okay, so if you don't remember the dates of the Tang Dynasty, review them here. Look at my video where I go over all the major dynasties. So Buddhism, by the Tang Dynasty, was absolutely fundamental to Chinese culture and civilization. As such, it is not surprising that Tang emperors should have had ambivalent feelings about Buddhism, both as a religion and even more so as an assemblage of institutions and people, temples, monasteries, monks, and nuns, so forth, which held substantial wealth in land and other resources, but which did not pay taxes. All right, so the Tang Dynasty emperors had started to regard Buddhism as a kind of rival, right, for power. The following edict from Emperor Wuzong, and Wuzong reigned from 841 to 846. And so this is the latter part of the Tang Dynasty, after the An-Lu-Shang Rebellion. You remember 755, I think, is the year of the An-Lu-Shang Rebellion, is indicative of the seriousness with which Tang emperors regarded Buddhism. The fact that Emperor Wuzong was a fervent Taoist, okay, so he's not a Buddhist, obviously, because he's criticizing Buddhism. He was a fervent Taoist and anxious to seek a Taoist elixir of immortality, and thus heavily under the influence of Taoist priests adds another twist to the plot. Okay, and as always in these worksheets, there's the abridged excerpt, and then the longer one. I will be reading from the longer one, starting with the questions that are provided on the worksheet to make us think that we can discuss in class. Question number 1. On what grounds does Wuzong criticize Buddhism? So keep this in mind as we read the excerpt. Are Emperor Wuzong's criticism grounded in Confucian philosophy? Okay, questions 1 or 2 are kind of the same question. Question 3. Compare Wuzong's criticism of Buddhism with that of Han Yu in his Memorial on the Bone of the Buddha. And we'll be reading this treatise or essay, whatever it is, by Han Yu later in the class. So when we get to that, we can compare Emperor Wuzong's criticism here with the criticism of Han Yu of Buddhism. Are there similarities between the two critiques of Buddhism? Are there differences? What are the philosophical bases of the two critiques? Question number 4, comparing Wuzong's critique of Buddhism with that of Han Yu, which do you find more convincing? Why? So again, we'll get to this when we can answer this in more depth once we read the essay by Han Yu. Question 5, if you were a Buddhist, what arguments could you use to counter Wuzong's critique? Okay, so how can one defend Buddhism from the critiques laid out here? And finally, question number 6, in the passage above, so the last passage of this text, of the excerpt I'm about to read, Wuzong outlines steps taken against Buddhism. Considering these steps, what do you think his main goals are in the attempt to weaken or even eradicate Buddhism? So what are his goals? Okay, now I will read the longer version of the excerpt. Selection from Emperor Wuzong's Edict on the Suppression of Buddhism, the Edict of the 8th month. We have heard that up through the 3 dynasties the Buddha was never spoken of. It was only from the Han Dynasty, remember it corresponds with the timeline of the Roman Empire, 200 BC to 200 AD more or less. It was only from the Han and Wei onward that the religion of idols gradually came to prominence. So he refers to Buddhism as the religion of idols. So in this latter age it has transmitted its strange ways, instilling its infection with every opportunity, spreading like a luxuriant vine, until it has poisoned the customs of our nation. Right, so Buddhism is a corrupting influence that came from outside, and you will note that the Japanese had very similar views of Buddhism in the Meiji period when they sought to sort of dispel, or what's the word I'm looking for? Cleanse the native culture and civilization from the corrupting foreign influence of Buddhism. And before he was aware, gradually, and before anyone was aware, Buddhism beguiled and confounded men's minds so that the multitude have been increasingly led astray. It has spread to the halls and plains of all the 9 provinces, and through the walls and towers of our 2 capitals. Each day finds its monks and followers growing more numerous, and its temples more lofty. It wears out the strength of the people with constructions of earth and wood, pilfers their wealth for ornaments of gold and precious objects, causes men to abandon their lords and parents for the company of teachers, and severs man and wife with its monastic decrees. Okay, so yes, in Buddhism, filial piety, for example, is not an important virtue. It's not a virtue at all, really. And according to the emperor here, Buddhism is destroying the Confucian foundations of civilization, severing man and wife with its monastic decrees. In destroying law and injuring mankind, indeed, nothing surpasses this doctrine. Now, if even one man fails to work the field, someone must go hungry. If one woman does not tend her silkworm, someone will be cold. At present, there are an inestimable number of monks and nuns in the empire, each of them waiting for the farmers to feed him and the silkworms to clothe him, while the public temples and private chapels have reached boundless numbers, all with soaring towers and elegant ornamentation sufficient to outshine the imperial palace itself. Okay, so again, this recognition that Buddhism is a kind of rival to his own majesty and his own authority. Having thoroughly examined all earlier reports and consulted public opinion on all sides, we no longer have the slightest doubt in our mind that this evil of Buddhism should be eradicated. Loyal ministers of the court and provinces have lent their aid to our high intentions, submitting most apt proposals that we have found worthy of being put into effect. Presented with an opportunity to suppress the source of age-old evil and fulfill the laws and institutions of the ancient kings, to aid mankind and bring profit to the multitude, how could we forbear to act? The temples of the empire that have been demolished number more than 4,600. The Buddhist temples he's referring to that his administration has already demolished number more than 4,600. 26,500 monks and nuns have been returned to lay life and enrolled as subject to the twice-a-year tax. More than 40,000 privately established temples have been destroyed, releasing 30 or 40 million Qing of fertile top-grade land and 150,000 male and female servants who will become subject to the twice-a-year tax. Monks and nuns have been placed under the jurisdiction of the Director of Aliens to make it perfectly clear that this is a foreign religion. Finally, and of course Buddhism, as you all know, is a foreign religion. It comes from India and makes its way into China around the 1st century AD and comes into Japan around the 5th century AD, I think. I'll have to check on the date, somewhere around there. But first into China in the 1st century AD. Foreign religion. Finally, we have ordered more than 2,000 men of the Nestorian and Mazdean religions to return to lay life and to cease polluting the customs of China. So obviously nationalism, the idea of the nation state wasn't around then, but there's a kind of tone of nationalism that runs through this essay. Final paragraph. Alas, what had not been carried out in the past seems to have been waiting for this opportunity. If Buddhism is completely abolished now, who will say that the action is not timely? Already more than 100,000 idle and unproductive Buddhist followers have been expelled, and countless of their gaudy, useless buildings destroyed. Henceforth we may guide the people in stillness and purity, cherish the principle of doing nothing, Wu Wei, principle of doing nothing, Wu Wei. Order our government with simplicity and ease, and achieve a unification of customs, so that the multitudes of all realms will find their destination in our august rule. Okay, so in the introduction I mentioned that he's the emperor is a advocate or a practitioner of Taoism, the way, following of the way. And here we see this idea, the principle of doing nothing he refers to in that last paragraph. Wu Wei is a very important idea in Taoism, and we'll discuss what he means here in that last paragraph. All right, that is all for now. We'll discuss more about this in class. Goodbye.